welcome. We're going to do our weekly forms run through, both for my practice and yours. If you want to join along, that's cool. Let's get right into it. All right, so we are looking at purchase agreements today. So today's date. Buyer is not going to be that. Buyer is going to be Noah Hughes and Ava Jackson. So let's go and pop that in. Earnest money, what property are they looking at buying? They're looking at buying this townhome for $72,000. So 1% is usually what the earnest money is. That's going to be $720. Automatically filled it in to the listing broker, or if checked, to wherever you're putting it. We're going to listing broker, so whoever's got that property listed is going to get that money. Street address. "9928 Bay Road, Eastview, Maryland." I wonder if that's a real address. Bay Road, Eastview, Maryland. This is where I start doing dumb shit. So, what? Oh, okay. 9928, that's the number. East Bay Road, right? See, this is why I start doing stupid stuff, is they have a weird, no, it's just Bay Road. Forget the East. Always double, triple check. Eastview, that's where I got the East from. We don't know what the county is, but we can look it up with a simple Google search. Of course, we're working out of Minnesota, so today it's going to be Eastview, Minnesota. And then zip code, I don't think that's going to do it. I wish it wouldn't pop up these saved infos. That's kind of annoying. So there's no zip code, no nothing, but know that you're going to have to use zip code. All right. Scroll. Purchase price was $72,000. Now, this game doesn't allow you to do negotiation and stuff like that, but we're really not practicing that. We're practicing forms. So usually it's 20% right here. 80. But sometimes it'll be different depending on if it's a conventional FHA, VA loan. That's going to alter those, and you can Google all that. Information is readily available. Not only that, you can just talk with banks. Closing date, whatever closing date, we'll just say today. All right, we're going to purchase it today. All right, it filled out everything there. Mortgage financing, he's paying cash. So we'll go back up here and we'll do, this is a deal that I would love to see. Love to see it. 0, 0. All right. So we've paid $720 already, which is 1% for the earnest money to show we're serious. And sometimes they'll pay more than that if it's cash. If it's cash, they might just throw the whole thing up front, but I wouldn't. So is not subject to mortgage financing. If is not, proceed to seller's contributions to buyer's costs. All right, so where's that? All right, so if I'm working for the buyer, I want this to be refunded to buyer. Earnest money paid to the buyer. Written statement is not provided and seller has not previously canceled this purchase agreement. The purchase agreement is canceled as its closing date. Seller shall immediately, buyer and seller, sign a cancellation, directing all earnest money here to be refunded to the buyer. If you're working for the buyer and you don't check that, I don't know what's wrong with you. You're protecting your buyer. That's your job. Lender commitment, but if the buyer is like, no, I'm super serious, I'm buying this house no matter what, and they want to convince the seller that it's going down, but you're leaving a loophole for the seller to be like, no, you checked right here, and no matter what, now I get that earnest money. So don't put that loophole in there. Lender commitment to work orders. If it needs work, seller will pay up to and this is in the purchase order. So the seller can look at this and be like, But and then seller buyer agrees to pay any reinspection fee. Usually that's going to be a buyer thing, but you could try to put it on the seller. That's another thing where the seller is going to look at these 2 blocks and be like, what? More often than not, they're going to look at these and be like, no harm, no foul. You get your money back, whatever. But these, they're agreeing to fix stuff. Now they've fixed stuff. And now the buyer is like, yeah, I'm going to, let's say up to 10,000, right? All right. So up to 10,000. Let's say they just spent 8,000. Buyer, please pick that up. You know what I'm saying? And furthermore, they might be like, I'm not fixing shit. And what you going to do about it? It goes back up to here. All right. FHA escape clause. Notwithstanding any other provisions of this contract, the purchaser shall not be obligated to complete the purchase of the property described here or to incur any penalty by forfeiture of interest, earnest money, deposits, or otherwise, unless the purchaser has given in accordance with the Department of Housing and Urban Development (HUD), FHA or DVA requirements, a written statement by the Federal Housing Commission, Department of Affairs, or a setting forth an appraisal value. Okay, so this is the purchaser has the privilege. So we're going to say that it's not less than, 72,000, right? Now, if it appraises and it's in a mortgage, so this is FHA financing only, which we don't care about, but let's say we do. All right, so not less than 72,000. That's what we're buying it for. Purchaser has a privilege and option. If they say it's only worth 70,000, you got to come up with $2,000. Or you offer $70,000. Right? You just edit the offer. Like FHA says it's not worth that. Sorry, I can't do it. So we either cancel and I get my earnest money back, or I make up the difference of $2,000 and we continue because they'll give you a loan for the value, or we lower the offer. All right, so DVA, we'll zero that out again. Plop. All right, next, lender processing fees. I believe the buyer should be paying for this. Seller agrees to pay closing costs. I mean, I don't know. Seller's coming out of this with all the money, so they're usually pretty happy and willing to do that. But that's up to you, your buyer. And if your seller says, "Hell no, I'm not paying $5,000 in closing costs," well, then sorry, they're going to reject your purchase offer, and they've got somebody like me looking at it on the other side. All right, DVA funding fee. So this is a veteran VA loan pursuant to federal one-time funding fee. It's either coming out of the buyer's pocket or it's coming out of the seller's proceeds. You could have it added to the mortgage amount too, if the house appraises for it. I think that's how that works, but that's mortgage stuff. So I would try to add it to the mortgage amount or at closing by the seller. Or yeah, seller's going to be at closing. Obviously, they don't have a mortgage, so either it's paid by the seller or paid by the buyer. And these are decisions that you got to run your buyer through and tell them the repercussions of it. This is something in school, and this is something in several schools after school, after I got licensed, that they're like, you got to go over all this with your buyer, man, because it's your buyer's contract. Like they're the one that's ultimately, going to buy a house or get screwed. So you got to run them through all these little things that could get them. And, paid by seller is nice, but if the seller rejects it, they'll probably have a reason for rejection. And, now you're writing purchase orders over and over again. So you want to make it favor your buyer, but you don't want to outright screw the seller either. All right, so seller is or is not contributing to buyer's costs. Right, we're just buying this house. So we're not too worried about this. This game doesn't cover a lot of this stuff. Property inspections, you're going to click this one. Purchase agreement is, if somebody's paying cash, they might just be like, nah, I just want to know what's going on with it. And I'm going to have a property inspection, but I would check is anyways, or what the hell is the sense of having a property inspection? I want to know what I'm getting into, but it's not contingent, so I'm buying it anyways, no matter what. Like that doesn't make any sense, but the option is there. Hi, kitty. Seller, and this is something you're going to have to call the listing agent while you're filling this form out. There's a lot of oh yeah, by the ways on these forms, and I don't think that this should be on the purchase order. I think that this should be on the acceptance of the purchase order. And, I was in the military. I modified a ton of forms. I sent in feedback reports on stuff, and I single handedly probably had 50 to 80 forms revamped over the course of my career by looking at it and be like, no kid straight out of high school is going to get through this shit. You know what I'm saying? And line 178, I hate you. I hate you. Because that's like, you got to basically go through this form like I'm doing. You got to put it on a checklist before you put the purchase order in. You got to call the seller's agent and be like, hey, are they going to allow intrusive testing or not? And why am I putting this on a buyer form? That's your seller's stuff. So it should be in the response to the purchase agreement, aka acceptance or decline. So typically, they're not going to want you poking around through the holes and everything. And then they're going to want you to fix it. And they're going to want you to fix it right. And if it's a flip, nope. Right. Other inspection items. You could add stuff to be inspected. Secondary sump tank. It's 10. Sometimes 7. I mean, I'd figure out when the inspector is scheduling his day and just schedule it for that. And if the inspector falls through, this is going to fall through anyways. So, purchase agreement subject to an addendum to the purchase agreement, sale of buyer's property. So, if the buyer has a house that they need to sell, you check that and you try to schedule the closing date the morning of this closing date. That way they close and they're in a moving truck ready to go, closing on this property. Purchase agreement contingent upon successful closing, which is scheduled already to close. Okay, so no offers, offer already scheduled to close. If they don't close, then obviously whatever we're offering here doesn't close. Okay? Without the sale of another property. So if we're just buying the property outright, we're taking option 3. Guy's got cash, he's coming in hot. All right, real estate taxes. If we're closing this month, we'll absorb this month. Homestead, seller shall not. We're going to homestead it anyways. Or maybe we won't. Maybe we're just buying it to flip it. So taxes, deferred real estate taxes. Yeah, sellers should be paying their taxes out of their proceeds. As of the date of closing, assessments. If a seller has an assessment balance, you need to pay that. We're not trying to absorb your $15,000 fucking sewer maintenance that you didn't pay, right? That's no. We had to deal with that on my townhome. We had a $10,000 assessment, and we did some things and flippity whooped, and we paid that $10,000 before we even thought about closing. I wasn't trying to mess around with that. So date of closing, special assessment, real estate taxes due. So all installments of specials, yeah. The seller needs to pay their assessments, but sometimes the buyer will pick it up if it's a payment. But if your buyer is looking at a $15,000 for the next however many years, they're not trying to hear that. That's the seller's assessment. It was, you don't want to be left with somebody else's dirty laundry. That sucks. All right, payment of, like, telling you, man. All right, so escrow. Yeah, see, and this is where they get you. It's like seller, if there's any special assessments, the bank is going to make you put into escrow 2 times the amount of the assessments as required by buyer's lender. So you're not, you know what I'm saying? No. Just no. Just tie the knot. No. Now, if the seller is in a foreclosure, that's a different story, and you're probably getting a huge deal on the house, and you might be willing to absorb an assessment. So there's that too. There's all sorts of things that could be going on with the property. So as of the date of this purchase agreement, seller represents that seller has not, hopefully, but maybe they have, of any new improvement project, and it hasn't been assessed yet. So you could have a looming assessment. Welcome to post-war suburbia, suckers. Additional provisions. Previously executed purchase agreement. This purchase agreement is not, right? And this actually came up in a purchase agreement recently. Client wanted to put in purchase agreements on multiple properties. So this is the one that is that. So if you already have an active purchase agreement, you're going to say is. If that one falls through, we're going to fall back on this one, right? This purchase agreement is not even valid until that other one is invalidated. So when that other one is canceled, this one becomes active. If they get another offer before this one becomes active, bye-bye. So worst case scenario, you put in a purchase order on something else, and on this one, somebody comes in, buys this one before this contract is validated by the cancellation of the other one. You see what I'm saying? And then their purchase agreement on that other one falls through. Too bad. You just lost two properties. You know? So that's the double negative. The net positive is, if you put the purchase order and then this one's contingent on the cancellation of that one. But usually it's not. You're going to put in one at a time. And then you got your dates, which we don't need. Marketable title. Hopefully it's warranty deed. You might be working with a lawyer. You might be working with a family member. And trustee. Contract for deed, I would highly avoid. You've got these people in the middle of nowhere areas that you're trying to pull a fast one. And you need to look out for them. You got to look out for them. In this contract for deed, I will be the first to, and not the last. If you've never heard this before, it's called dickering, and they're gonna work you. That's why realtors exist. So, all right, so other deed, but hopefully we've got a warranty deed. And we might have a trustee or personal representatives or a spouse, which is a it's not joint. It's let's Google it. It's been a minute since I've looked at this. List of types of deeds in Minnesota. All right. Limited. This is the one where they've got like the disclosure that's like seller's disclosure alternative. You'll probably get a limited warranty deed because they're not trying to take responsibility for anything. Quit claim, they're just giving it up. This is also no warranties. Similar to general, narrow scope. Bargain and sale deed. It's usually obtained at a auction, I would guess. And like we can always just no explicit warranties, using foreclosure, limited assurance transfers. In other words, the top is the most protected. It even says it right here. Bottom is not protected at all. If you're a house flipper and you're getting a bargain or sale deed, you probably got a good deal on the house and you ain't suing anybody. All right. So there's that. But we're hoping warranty deed, but sometimes it'll be a limited. So immediately after closing or other, maybe they'll take possession before the date, after the date. Linked devices, security systems, stuff like that. A lot of the stuff with the title is going to be done with the title company. And that's what they go to school for, and that's what they do. So remember that other form that says I'm not any of these things? That's right. I'm not any of these things. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a tax professional. I am not a title company. I'm not a garbage company. I'm not a plumber. I'm not a furnace repair guy, HVAC guy. I'm none of those things. I'm helping you purchase a house. I'm writing up the order and finding you suitable housing. That's what I do. So buyer has a right to walk through. Buyer has received disclosure statement or seller's disclosure. Remember I was talking about the seller's disclosure alternative? That's usually because the house isn't directly being sold by the owner. So either death, divorce, whatever, probate. They're not sane. They can't sell the house, Parkinson's, whatever. So, but hopefully we get that one. Let's keep on going. We're muscling through. Seller warrants that the property is either directly or indirectly connected to city sewer. Yes. It looks like that high rise looks like a city sewer. You're not putting a well on that fucking high rise, bro. All right, so subsurface sewage treatment does not know. I mean, if you're city sewer and water, I don't even know if you have to fill this out. Does not know. I don't think you have to fill any of this out down here. Is not subject to an addendum. Home warranty, sure. Seller might throw it in. Buyer might pay for it directly. I think it's like $500. Buyer. All right, agency. We've got the two agents, so we'll have the seller's agent, buyer's agent. And if we both work for the same company, if we report to the same broker, it's going to be that. Buyer broker's compensation. And see this wording right here, or zero. Some people get caught up in that, but it's whichever is greater. They added whichever is greater. So 2.7 is greater than zero. Don't try to pay me zero. All right. Please check one of the following options. Dual agency does not, but it may. Like I said, if both you and the seller's agent work for the same brokerage, report to the same broker, does. All right, sign. Might have some addendums. We're not going to go over any of those today. Counter offer, they might get back to you and say, 72,000 is what we put it up for, but we want to sell it for 75,000. I would cancel immediately. If somebody puts it up for 72,000 and then counter offers 75,000, I would cancel immediately. Don't play them games, bro. Don't play them games. You put it up for 72,000, here's 72,000, and if it's not sold, cancel. I wouldn't say it if I haven't heard of it. So, if checked, this purchase agreement is subject to counteroffer, final acceptance date, blah, blah, blah. Is not foreign person. You'll see that a lot. Sign. Final acceptance date, we'll say today. Pop. We're trying to pay cash for this. Sign. Wire fraud alert. That's also one of the check boxes. And we're done. So we still haven't sold the property yet. Now we're waiting for the seller to get back to us and accept our purchase order, which it's such a luscious full offer, cash, love and life, right? So we're going to look at the seller's side next time, and we're going to work our way up to accepting this offer. So thanks for joining. We'll be back again at a future point in time with Forms 5, signing the seller. We're gonna make believe that I'm the seller. I'll sell it. Thanks for watching.